Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our fifth webinar for standard drafters. I am Stephanie William, and I am an editor in the publication unit here in Sentinel, and I will be presenting this webinar with my colleague Amy Jane.
Hi everybody, my name's Amy Jane Conley and I'm also an editor here at Sentinel.
So in this webinar we will be talking about figures, tables and formulae. For each we will explain a set of technical rules, explain how and when to use them. Of course, we will be showing examples, and for each topic we will have a recap of the key points. So now Amy will start with the figures.
Yes, thank you Stephanie. So firstly we're going to focus on drawings and figures. So what are the technical rules? Well, I firstly have to mention that these rules are obligatory for Sen, not Senelec, although if you do follow them for Senelec, it really does help us out as editors. So the figures or drawings should be delivered in a separate file to the draft text, and we ask that you send them in the following format. So we like 600 dpi, compression LZW, and size 100, and by that we just mean that you don't insert your figure into the Word document and then resize it. Make sure that what you insert is the size that you want. And then we like them in either TIFF, which is Adobe Photoshop, or EPS, which is Adobe Illustrator. Naming is also really important, so for general figures we like 001 or figure _1. And for annexes, use the letter of your annex and then the number, so A001 for Annex A, figure 1, or fig _A1 for the same thing. The figure itself must be language neutral with no full words included in the figure itself, and the title must be clear and concise. So, how and when to use them? It is important to remember that figures are purely informative and should not include any requirements, instructions, recommendations or permissions. Any figures must be cited in the text, like so. It can be as simple as see figure 1. They should only be used when there is a need for more clarity. So for example, if you have a really long paragraph explaining a procedure, a figure or drawing can help to illustrate it. Line drawings are preferable, but do make sure that the lines are thick and clear to see, good quality, and that any labelling is not blurred. However, photographs can be used where line drawings are not viable. So now we have our first example, and we know that this is a very dry subject, so our examples for today's presentation will be very Belgian. So we have chocolate, beers, waffles and fries. And for our first example, we have a simple drawing of a chocolate fountain. As you can see, it is a simple and clear line drawing with clear labels 1, 2 and 3. We have a key and a title. Now it's worth noting that the key is not obligatory unless there are labels on the drawing. As we have labels, we also have a key. The key should go between the bottom of the figure and between the title. And the title should also be clear and concise and be centre justified beneath. Now please don't send your key as part of your figure. We need to be able to edit the key, especially when we send the document for translation. If there are any full words used on the figure or the key is included, the translators will have to create a new figure, and that is when mistakes happen. So now Stephanie is going to give us a little more complex example.
Thank you. Yes, so this example will be more complex because we will have subfigures. When you want to have subfigures, we ask you to have subtitles, one for each subfigure. Then in this example we also have dimensions. So here you see there is a 45 millimeters dimensions, but we don't actually write millimeters in the figure itself. The units must be mentioned above the figure, so just before and on the right side of the page. So it means that all dimensions in your figures will have to be the same units. We will also have in this example a key, just like Amy just explained, and also notes. So notes to figures follow the same rules as the other notes of any document. So no requirement, no recommendation, instruction or permissions in these notes. The notes to figures are numbered separately. So if we had here a second note, you would have note 1 and then note 2. And finally we have the title. A side note about the naming of these subfigures: when you provide the files in separate. We would like to name them 002A and 002B in this example, or fig underscore 2A and 2B. So how do you format these type of figures? When you have subfigures and you want them to be shown side by side, the easiest way is to put them in a table and then to hide the borders. So for that, you can find the options in your Word options. So when you click anywhere in the table, you have the table tools option. You click on design and then you can there hide the borders as shown on screen. And just for you to know, it's also how to format the keys. They're also put in tables and then with hidden borders. So I would also like to have a note on diagrams, because we very often receive diagrams in figures, but this is very not the most optimal way, because the quality of these figures, because there is something written in it, it's never perfect. They are copied and pasted from other documents, shrinked and then resized, and so in the end they very often become hardly readable. Also, this is very important for translation purposes, because the translators actually have to provide a new figure, which is really time consuming for them. So it is actually easier if you provide it as a table. So here you can see the tables, and the dotted lines are the hidden borders, and then those diagrams would be actually called tables. So here we will have table F1, that would be the first table in Annex F. So now a quick recap about drawing and figures. Please do send the figures in a separate file to the draft. Please do use TIFF and EPS formats, so Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. Have them size 100%, 600 dpi, and compression as MW. Use a language neutral figure and use a key, and always provide a title. Have the figure being clear and concise. Use tables when it comes to formatting different subfigures. Use the appropriate naming conventions. Please don't include the key in the figure's image. Please don't provide figures in PNG, JPEG, or any other format. Don't manually resize the figures in Word. Don't include the units in the figure. And finally, don't use blurry or poor quality images. So now Amy will tell us more about tables.
Yes, so on to tables, and these can be really simple. So firstly, the technical rules. Your table must be in an easily comprehensible form, and by that we just mean that it has to be easy to understand. It must be cited in the text, and just like a figure, it can be as simple as see table 1. They must be simply created, so nothing too fancy even though it might look really good. Simple tables really help us when we generate the XML, so complex tables with strange cells mean that we have to spend several hours rekeying tables just so that we can generate XML properly, which can result in mistakes and untimeliness with the document itself. They have to be numbered separately to the clause. I'm going to talk a little bit about this on the next slide. I have an example. And finally, no nested tables. What is a nested table? It's just, as you can see by the example, a table contained within a cell in another table. This really does mess up the XML, and we don't like it because we have to rekey everything so it looks the same. So please do avoid it. So how and when to use them? Sorry. The table should be used when it's the most efficient means of presenting information. So say you have a big paragraph of numerical data, a table would be a good way to show it clearly. Now, as I said previously, they have to be numbered independently to the clause. So this basically means that if it's the first table in the document, regardless of the clause it's in, it is table 1. The second table in the document is table 2, as you can see by this example. Annexes work a little bit differently. If it's the first table of Annex A, your table becomes table A1. Similarly, first table of Annex B, table B1, second table of Annex B, table B2, and so on. And the general format is the title first, which should be centre justified, and then the table. And we also like a little bit of space between the title and the table itself. So a little note on table headings and what to do if you have a really big table that continues across several pages. You need to make sure that the titles of your columns are repeated on each page. So to do this, you will highlight your table header as shown and right click and you will get this drop down menu. From this, you choose table properties, which will give you this box. Here you choose the row tab and then you check this box here, so repeat as header row at the top of each page. And this just makes everything a bit clearer if you have a really, really long table of the same columns. So now onto a common example, and this is one we come across daily as editors, and we've chosen the subject of Belgian beers. So here we have an example of an in-text citation, so a list of beers and their origins can be found in Table 1. And there's Table 1's title, and then a really simple table. You can see all the information nice and clearly, it's nicely formatted, and it looks nice too. So now a more complex table, which we still do get, as you can see here. There's a merged cell at the top of the final three, and just those dots there, that's just where your extra information would go. Obviously, we have kept our example nice and short for the purposes of this webinar. But at the bottom, beneath all the data, you can see in this red box, there are a few different things that weren't in the first example. So firstly, there is a paragraph containing a requirement, which is not obligatory, but is useful if you have something you want to include about the table's data that doesn't belong in the text. Ours here is that beer strength shall be determined by the bottle's label. Beneath that, we have a note which, like in text notes, cannot have any requirements or recommendations, but they're numbered according to the table, so that there, if there was more than one note, would be note 1. Underneath that would be note 2, note 3, and so on. Beneath that, in a separate cell, there are footnotes. Now, footnotes don't matter if they have requirements or not. So to show you, we have examples of both. Footnote A is a requirement, so Farabun shall not be included in this table. And footnote B is not a requirement. Medium strength beers are not obligatory. Now, there are some things that aren't allowed, and if we see them, we absolutely will change them. So firstly, as you can see here, there is a diagonal line in the first column in the first cell. This makes it really, really difficult to generate XML, and from this, we will change it into this example here. So as you can see, strength now has its own column. This is what we can generate XML with. We also have issues with dark coloured cells which have white text over them. It looks good, but when we generate the XML, we get this issue. The white text disappears completely. As you can see, it is highlighted, so it is there, but we just can't see it. So to avoid this, use light coloured cells with black text. And on to the final point here, vertical cells, please do try to avoid it, because when we generate the XML, this happens, all the cells are messed up, and it's really, really difficult to fix, very time consuming, so please do avoid it where possible. So a recap about tables. They need to be clear and concise. You need to number your tables properly, so not according to the clause. Construct your table simply, no diagonal lines, anything like that. Cite your table in the text. Insert the actual table in the text. Now this just means don't send us a screenshot or a figure or anything like that. Make sure you use the actual table so we can edit it. Do repeat header rows if the table continues onto several pages. Don't use white text over dark coloured cells. Don't construct complex tables with diagonal lines and all that. Don't use an XLS file in place of a table. This really does make life difficult. Don't use a screenshot instead of a table. Don't include nested tables. And now Stephanie is going to tell us all about Formulae.
Thank you. So formulae, how and when to use them. Mathematical formulae are used to express the relationship between quantity. So usually they are formatted like this. So using symbols that are actually explained in a key below the formula. So a little word about the key. It is introduced with the word where, so please don't use with. Like for keys to figures, they are formatted actually in a table with hidden borders that you can still find in your word options. And each symbol is introduced in the key with the wording is the, so it actually reads like a full sentence. So here it would be D equals A plus B squared on C, where D is the word chocolate, A is the sugar, and so on. So it's really a full sentence. Some technical rules about formulae. So please use commas to express decimals. So you actually write 1 comma 2 and not 1 comma 2. So please be aware that commas are not used to express thousands. So if you want to write 1200, you actually write 1 space 200. So we will have to change that if you come across these cases. So as I said before, always use symbols, as you can see here in the examples below. Don't write full words in the formula. And very important, be consistent in the symbol you use. So don't use one symbol to refer to different things throughout one same document. More about symbols. Please use only one level of subscript in symbols. So I will explain myself. If you want to write meter squared, for example, the number 2, that would be the squared mark, must be written either with a subscript or superscript function, so the word function that you can find in your basic word options, or also with the function raised or lowered that you can find in the more advanced function. So you would click on this, on this button to access the advanced functions. You will have this box appearing, and in advanced you can choose the position, raised or lowered. If you choose this option, please be aware that the font size of the element must be 2 sizes smaller. So if the M is Cambria 11, the squared will be Cambria 9. So how to actually create more complex equations? Please don't use word equations. We will have to convert those equations into MathType. This is absolutely necessary for us because MathType is compatible with the program we use to convert to XML. And MathType can be downloaded from the internet. If you don't want to use MathType, you can also use the basic keys from a keyboard. I mean, meter squared, you don't need MathType for that. So about MathType, if you download it, it will actually appear on your word options. It's an add-on, so it will be a new tab like this. And if you want to create a new equation, you click on inline. You will have this box appearing, and then there you can create your equation. MathType is quite user-friendly and it's really quick to pick up. So citation and numbering. Just like figures and tables, equations must be cited and numbered in documents. So here we have an example. The proportions of the components of Belgian white chocolate shall be determined according to Formula 1. A little note on the formatting here. You can see that the number of the equation is on the right of the page. There is a big white space here. This is actually formatted thanks to one tab that you can adjust with this function on your ruler. So this little inverted L on the ruler above your page. So please don't use several tabs to have the number of the equation appearing on the right side of your page. And also something that we see more and more often, it's equations in tables with no borders. That's also not correct. We will have to convert that, and that is really time consuming. Now about values, dimensions, and tolerances. Values and dimensions shall be indicated as being minimum or maximum and specified with their tolerances in an unambiguous manner. So here you will first have examples on values and dimensions. So basically make sure you always repeat the units so that it's very clear. And on the right, you have examples of how to express range and tolerance. So first, to express a range, you repeat the unit. So we would have from 63% to 67%. Whereas for tolerance, you actually go from one center value and then you mention the tolerance which is allowed. So here that would be 65 plus or minus 2, all that between brackets, and then the unit. So now a recap about formulae. Please do use symbols. Do explain the symbols beneath the formulae. Do cite and number the formulae. Do use commas for decimals. Use MathType and use only one tab between the formula and its number. Please don't write full words in formulae. Don't use one symbol for different quantities throughout one same document. Don't use both superscript and raised functions. Don't use dots for decimals and commas for thousands. Don't use word equation or another software. And don't put a single formula in a table with no borders.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you.